So let's talk about Linux. Specifically, I've had people ask me about what I run on my desktop or what I run on my laptop, and right now it's still KDE Neon. I've been running Linux full-time as my primary operating system since I think about 2008, so roughly 10 years. I'm trying to remember exactly when I started, but it's been a while. And it was very painful in the beginning. It's very easy to run Linux as your desktop now. Most of the arguments that people have is that this is not an environment they're used to or this or that. The one argument that still holds a lot of water, and it's still a problem I have, is the gaming argument. Yes, I have my only computer that I own that natively runs Windows is my gaming system. Sorry, I know there's some Linux folks saying, but you can do this, and you can. It's too much, and some of the games don't work as well, and that's a different day, different topic. But yeah, that isn't that. If you say I can't run Linux because I'm just too hardcore of a gamer, you got me. I can't convince you otherwise, because even myself, I have a native one. But my computers that I run for my day-to-day business, that I do all the administration work on, that I do everything that runs and supports my company, including me supporting all my clients, all Linux. And yes, my users run Windows, and that's fine. The worst argument I've heard is someone says, well, you should feel the pain of your clients and run the same software. I'm like, no, I have work to do. I have to fix all those problems. And Linux has proven to be especially in the last recent years, a very stable platform to have as your desktop operating system. And with so many things being web-enabled, there's not many other excuses, apart from the gaming one, that why you can't run Linux as your full-time desktop. Now, I've been running KDE Neon for over a year now, and I'm really happy with it. So I want to run down me running KDE Neon, the methods by which I use it, and some of the tools I use, and kind of give you an overview of it. Now, is this the distro you should start with? We'll start there. Probably not. KDE Neon is wonderful and pretty and all kinds of fun stuff. KDE Neon is not absolutely the most smoothest system. They have done an amazing job of quashing bugs. I tried it a while ago, and I had some issues here and there, and it just didn't seem stable, so I've been with Ubuntu forever. They just seem to have a really good, cohesive, albeit kind of boring desktop. But boring's good, because stable is what you need to get work done. This is bleeding edge stuff, so you end up with some quirkiness. But lately, the only quirkiness in probably the last 6 months that's actually caused any minor issue is the wallpaper keeps disappearing on my desktop, but not on my laptop. I have had no problems on my laptop. It seems to run it fine, but the desktop, which is also why I'm presenting on my laptop, with the 3-screen layout, one, hard to present on YouTube, but also that's where some of my troubles come in, is with a third screen. I lose wallpaper problems. It doesn't really cause any productivity issues for me, but it is the one consistent annoyance I've seen, and they always seem to fix it. So an update will come through. I load the updates right away. I'm always excited. It's the absolute opposite of Windows. I'm excited when there's new updates. What new features did I get? Windows is always like, how long it's going to take and what's not going to work. Looking at you, USB broken 2 days ago, and did a video about that. Anyways, staying on topic here, updates don't bother me. I don't brace for impact. I don't, oh no, it's something bad's going to happen. With the updates, they load, they work great, and they give me new features, but they occasionally break the wallpaper on one of my monitors at complete random, and it just won't let me put the wallpaper back, but then almost like the next day, there's always an update. So that is, at least I will gripe about it that much, and you're going, Tom, you're griping about wallpaper? Yeah, it's that stable. That's my current complaint is the wallpaper. Everything else seems to work great. So let's jump over here, and let's start with the specs on my laptop. So my laptop is a Intel Core i5 5300U CPU. This is the mobile processor, and this is an IBM ThinkPad. And I've done a review. This is the same laptop I've actually been using for quite a while. I've done a review on it, and I'm still using it. It works really well. Now, first thing I will say, it's small. It's the X250. It's not super powerful, and that's also why I wanted to do this on this versus my really high-powered i7 desktop with 16 gigs of RAM and a high-end graphics card. So this just has the generic Intel graphics in it, nothing high-end. And that kind of speaks to the performance that you get out of KDE Neon. And this is something that is making me really happy, is that they've done a lot of optimizations versus before it was a little bit sluggish. They've actually gotten it down to even a 30% faster boot time with the latest update and the latest iteration of this, which is really nice. Now, if you're not, I'm going to give you a quick overview. If you're a little bit curious about how Linux works, this is a Ubuntu with KDE Neon rolling the distro differently. So you start with a base distro, and technically Ubuntu is based on Debian, so it's the same family as the underlying. And then the desktop environment, or DE as you hear a lot of people say, that's where KDE comes in, and KDE is a desktop environment. Right now, with the latest iteration of Ubuntu, you're getting the GNOME desktop. The GNOME desktop's nice. I kind of like the KDE one, but this is the fun thing about Linux. You can have a same underlying distribution, but then have different desktop environments that you can put on top of them. There's lighter weight ones, there's heavier weight ones, and that's actually where it's kind of nice. There's competition in the Linux market to provide you with a really good desktop. KDE allows the wobbly windows that you're seeing here, which is kind of cool. People ask about that, and I'm going to show you a little bit of customizations that I've got in here, because that's one of the things I love about KDE in general, that as a desktop environment, is it allows for a lot of customization. Plasma works great. And you're seeing my laptop tax right now. It's actually because of the screen recording is what's taking up most of it. So let me go over here, pull this up under HTOP, and you can see it's pulling up some processor power. And a lot of that has to do with what you see right here, which is OBS that's running. Open Broadcast Studio, that's this tool here. And because it's recording at full 1080, it taxes the processor a bit because we're doing all this. But the animations still remain really, really smooth. The only thing you're hearing a little bit is the fan noise from the laptop. This laptop's generally silent, but it's taxing a bit. Now, I've only got 8 gigs of RAM in here, which is fine because it doesn't, actually most of the RAM is generally taken up by the browser. So at 8 gigs is perfectly fine to keep things running. Matter of fact, even with the browser open until I get a bunch of tabs open up, you can see right here on the side is the physical memory. So let's start with some of the widgets that I have over here. Let me just minimize things out of your way. And the first thing I kind of like is the way the widgets work on here. So if I want to add a widget, I go over here, and you have all kinds of things you can add and features on there. Some silly ones like comic strips. I can set a device notifier over the side, CPU load monitor, and then each of these widgets can be customized. The ones that I've chose over here, and I'm like changing them out, is CPU load monitor, memory status, and hard disk I/O. And this is something I always want to know: is something taxing my hard drive? What's going on with the network? And how much memory do I have left if I have too many things opening? And one of the things I run a lot of is Kdenlive, which is what I edit all my videos with. I've done a whole open source workflow talking about this. And this is also easier to present on my laptop as well because it's down to single screen. So if we open recent, and let me find something in here. This was my son, but you can see it runs through here pretty quick. And this is where I'll do my editing, and even with this open, still, now we're only up to 1.9 gigs. So it's still pretty lightweight on memory, and this is important. And this is a big objection people have with different desktop environments is, how heavy are they on the memory usage? And KDE has really come a long way because they used to be a little heavier side, and now they're much lighter weight. Now, my browser of choice for a few reasons is still Chrome. I really do like Firefox, and I do have Firefox on here. And Firefox works really well on Linux, as does Chrome, but just everything syncs really, really well with Chrome with a lot of the Google tools that I use. It's always not given me a problem. And until recently, Firefox was always a little quirky with a few things. Now, with the latest Firefox update, I have considered switching back because they now seem to be a step ahead of the Chrome world on a lot of things because of the new engine. So that's still a philosophical debate. I'm just used to using Chrome. For now, I'll keep using it, but I keep both browsers on here, especially when I'm doing testing of websites and things like that. We make sure all of them are on there. Now, with KDE Neon, you have your software center, and this was really bad about a year ago. This has become really nice now for loading different applications. So if you're looking for an application, you know what it is, you can go through here, and they've got them all nice grouped together. So here's your applications. We can find different calculator apps. We can find different games. If you want to load something like I have LibreOffice on here, they've got this nice tiered out look for the discovery tool that I like a lot. It's how you get apps on here. And kind of give you a little bit of a background. The way it works in the world of Linux is you have app repositories that are maintained. So you don't have to go and download and find other third-party software. So that helps mitigate the risk because the apps are very curated and made sure that bad things don't get in there. It's not absolutely impossible. There is no such thing as an absolute foolproof system. But this is actually why Microsoft themselves are going to a store-style platform, is because once you get everything from verified sources and a vetted source, you have a better chance of having a secure program versus some random website that created software. Now, you can load third-party software, of course, in Linux, and you can add third-party repositories as well that are trusted. These are other ways you can get software on here, but the ideal way, if you're new to Linux, you don't want to have any risk, is just get things out of the App Store itself, essentially what this is. So this is the Discover tool, and it's also nice the way it scales. So if it decides over here, it'll actually start scaling down, and watch it goes to a single mode. So then we can go through each program and then go back to each other one from there. Now, the other things it used to have a lot of problems doing was loading any of these. Sometimes it would get stuck loading. So they've really done a good job of bringing all this up. Now, they also have in here a lot of Plasma add-ons, which is Plasma is the display part of the display interface. So you can even get different themes and everything else. So you can do a lot of customization and add widgets and add features all right here. And if you can say, you know, I don't like the icons in here, I want to choose a different icon theme, you can do that. You can start picking, customizing, and playing around with it without ever having to go try to download some random thing. And as you notice when I'm going through this, we're not running around through the command line. Now, I'm still, because I do a lot of server admin on Linux, I spend a lot of time still running things in the command line, and all of that works. So you still can do, you know, apt get install, well, sudo, because I'm running as a user. And I can still install, you know, apps and things like that. So I can do apt get install Kdenlive or any other apps. That still works from the command line. You can still update from the command line, but this tool handles all of it for those of you that are new to Linux and want to get on, you know, want to get started and go, hey, I just need these things loaded. So that's your applications manager for KDE. Like I said, they've come a long way. It works really, really well. Some of the other software that I use in here, and we'll just run through them real quick here. So I got the web browser. I run a screen tool a lot for screen snippings, and this is great. And the reason why is, let me show you something here. People ask me questions all the time. How do I do this or how do I do that? And I grab something. You can set a delay. I've got a 1 second delay because that's usually enough for me to have a window open. I click the edit button. I go, this is the thing you want to point at. And then I copy paste this right into whatever my reply is to an email. This is a real common thing I do when I'm showing. A lot of times I got to instruct people where something is. This is my favorite way. If people wonder how we reply so fast, I'm like, Shutter, there's the window snipping tool. Shutter is essentially to me, a lot more advanced version of it because it'll also keep a collection of all the things you've recently screenshotted. So these are screenshots I sent for an ad run we did, and the results of that ad run, just grabbed a screenshot of it and sent it out real quick. So Shutter is a great tool for that. OBS, obviously, Kdenlive for screen recording. OBS is really good for that. It's that is cross-platform, and that loads up really well on here, and it's natively in the store. Kdenlive, of course, for video editing. Now, for those of you that wonder, because I do run a lot of virtual machines on here, that actually runs great inside of here. I'm not going to start this up in a moment. This is how I test other distributions. But VirtualBox, Oracle VM, VirtualBox Manager, can't say enough good things about it. If you have a couple things that you need to run, and for example, I call this my Windows 10 support system. Sometimes, because I don't spend all my time in Windows 10, I keep it up to date, and occasionally there's a tool or a thing I need to do for a client, or they want me to test a piece of software, and I just pull it all up in a virtual machine. And I also, because of the way Windows 10 and pain in the butt updates that it is, I run it every now and then just to keep it up to date. It's a fully licensed, properly licensed Windows 10. But I have found I get broken licensing errors because I frequently do this, and we're going to clone it. We're going to do a linked clone. And before I load any software to keep my original one clean, I start with a clone or I start with a snapshot. It turns out that causes a licensing error. So every now and then I got to say yes to a stupid window in there. I don't know what Microsoft's policy is on that. I cloned it, but I'm not running 2 instances of it, so I think I'm within the license of it. I don't know. This is where Microsoft gets a little bit confusing to me because I don't want crap loaded on my computer if I have to test software for a client or some special. We have a client with a special tools that they have us load on here to connect to things because it's all Windows based. Well, that's what this is for, and I can go into a network, still run my Linux, still feel secure that my machine's working well, and then tie in a virtual machine of Windows on here. So for those people, when you're doing support administration like I do, especially when it's server support, if there's some tool that only runs in Windows I have to run, I have that ability to do this. So that's the VirtualBox on there. It's also great because if you need to jump into Windows because you have something, like Photoshop, for example, and you can't run that natively on Linux yet, not well. Someone's going to say, yeah, I know you can get it running under Wine, which is an emulator essentially for Windows. It's kind of like an emulator. I know it's not an emulator, but let's just, for namesake, it lets you run Windows programs inside Linux, but it doesn't work that great. It works good for some things, not for others. It's still a Band-Aid on a system. It's not native. So Photoshop can run great inside of a virtual machine, and I do have a subscription for Photoshop, and I use that inside of there. It works great. So that's my solution for if I need to do Photoshop. And the replacement for Photoshop, someone's telling you, Tom, what about GIMP? Okay, I run GIMP. I use that for all of my workflow for things like my YouTube thumbnails and things like that. So it works good for stuff like that, but on the other side, it just doesn't handle things near as nice as Photoshop. So I can do templates in here, and I've done my templates for my YouTube channel. So this is the templates that you're used to seeing. I got them all controlled inside of here. They work well. It handles it pretty nice. It gets the job done. It's not a great solution because the text layers are terrible inside of GIMP here. They just don't handle text near as smooth as Photoshop does. Also, when it comes to layers, yes, it has layers, so I can control and make different pieces of the layers visible. But the downside to all of that is it does not do like easy, I want to put a drop shadow. It's not a one-click thing. So for those of you that are used to Photoshop, you're going to find GIMP very lacking. There's lots of little workarounds. I've been doing tutorials trying to get better at it. I've gotten to where it fits into my workflow, so I don't have to spin up Windows just to go to Photoshop just to edit, things like the basic thumbnails for my YouTube channel. But overall, if you got power work to get done, and this is why we have an Adobe subscription for our web development side of the business, you just need Photoshop to get the website graphics edited and things like that. So my main web developer, which isn't me, she's using Photoshop all the time to get things done. That is a lacking part in Linux. But GIMP does work for all your basic editing needs. Let me start closing some of the stuff we have open here. Close that, close that. Now, other tools I use. I really like Genie, which is a code editing tool. So if you're looking for something to, I don't know if I have anything recently open in this computer. So, okay, something real basic here. It supports a lot of different languages, and it does all the code highlighting, so it's not a bad development environment. It's got links if you get in. I don't really compile much. I mostly just dabble with some bash scripts, usually for sysadmin stuff, but you can integrate a lot more for development on here. So that's nice. It's, all these tools that I'm talking about are in the repository, so you can just install them through the software installer. Other tools I use on here. I gotta look. So, it's those things, I use them so much I don't always think about it. So I use SyncThing. I've talked about that before. No need to go into a whole demo because it just runs in the background to sync up the files on this as I change them with my main server. And I actually don't have it running all the time. And the reason I don't have it running all the time is it doesn't need to. I'm only doing it when I know I'm editing something. I open up SyncThing, so I want files to sync, but I keep my laptop to the bare minimum because most of the time this laptop, which I do use at home, this is my only computer at home besides the gaming one, that if I do any client work at home, it's always done on this because it's kept secure because everything's set to be encrypted on these. And by the way, just a security practice in general, because laptops, especially because they're so portable, are very high risk. Everything on this is encrypted. You put a BIOS password on it. It has an encrypted drive, which is when you're setting up and loading in these Linux distros. It asks, do you want to encrypt your home folder? Well, yeah. Or you want to do a whole drive encryption? Even better. This even has encrypted swap file. That way, not even a swap file, if anything goes in there, it's all encrypted. So if someone were to take this, I would be agitated because it's missing, but not worried that it's missing. So when you're dealing with that, that's one of the reasons encryption is so important. Do that from the beginning. It makes recovery, if you ever have a problem, really, really difficult. Just always back up. I'm not worried about anything on here because that's why I have sync thing on here. Anything I'm doing in real time is being backed up when I'm actually working, so no concerns there. If it goes away, whatever. It sucks if this laptop died. It would be terrible if someone stole it. I'd be angry, but I'm not worried about security, and that is still an utmost concern and why I keep the most minimal amount of services running on here because I don't want anything externally accessible. Now, getting back to how KDE Neon handles things, let's talk about files real quick because it's talking about working on things. I love the file manager. Windows feels so clunky to me all the time. And it's because of the way the Dolphin File Manager is really just, it's nice, it's pretty, it lets me handle things in a really simple way. And so let's open up something right here. Like, I hope this isn't bad. Oh yeah, one of those old electronics kits, I saved a picture of it that someone had, I thought it was kind of cool. So you get this is kind of inclusive with it. These aren't third-party apps, this is built into KDE Neon. You get this when view, I'm sorry, I'm reading it bad. But what this allows you to do is if you open up a graphic, you can then jump through the graphics and it gives you nice little thumbnails of everything so you can go through and look at stuff. But it integrates into the file manager so I don't have to do anything. And by default, I have previews turned off, but I can also preview them here by this. So you get this really flexible file manager. And let's go a little step further. Let's open up tabs. So here's all the different tabs I have open, and this allows me to take a single instance of the file manager and have everything managed in tab, but I could just as easily, let's go ahead and open a new window. And now I have it opened over here. Now it's very smart about remembering the preview setting was open, so it had it back on. But if I turn it off, and we're going to close this, it wants to know if I quit all the tabs or current tab. You can say don't ask you again, we're going to quit. Preview still off, and if we open up a new window again, preview still off. You can set defaults, but I like the way it remembers what you last did in a very clean way to make files easy to go through. And you have all these here where you can just break them out to different formats, trees. The file management's really, really easy. You also have the recently saved documents today, yesterday, this month, last month, other groupings for documents and images. Now, something else, you're probably going, but I got to connect to my Windows server and things like that through Samba. And I'm like, yes, I'm out of the habit of doing this, but it has a network discovery tool. I like to type in the addresses. I usually know exactly what I'm going to access, and the way you do that is like this: smb:// and IP or UNC path of the name. Whoops, and I should type it right. 3.4. That just connected to here. This is actually an open share, and boom. Right here is things I'm working on. This is a open share we have, but you're probably saying, okay, what about ones that have passwords? Sure, customer file. It prompts you for the username and password to connect to that. So you can connect to Windows shares on your Windows box, or in this case, this is actually a FreeNAS box. I can connect to those shares and get onto the system. No problem. If this password protected, it'll ask me for a password, and Blazing Bucket is kind of our joke one, and so is this one. Well, this one's not a joke one. This was when we were just dumping things back and forth over here, playing around. But these are some of the test dev servers that I was copying back and forth. Now, speaking of that, let's talk about what happens when you copy things inside of here. So let's go through, and where's a big file? Do I have anything big? All right, here's the website backup. So we're going to copy this, and we'll just paste it right here. Now, you're used to probably the Windows dialog that comes up. You can force these to come up, but by default, each job that's running just goes down here. And you can expand it out. And this is a notification panel. I can pin, I can have it on top, I can break it out, but I like it right here. It's kind of where my notifications go. It tells me the speed at which it's transferring. I know it's doing it. And I like the auto hide at the bottom, so I like to maximize my screen real estate. But yeah, I can see which jobs are running. Now this actually groups all my jobs. If I'm running a render for Kdenlive or anything, this works perfectly fine in here as well. It's just a standard tray notification for things like that. So it keeps it really clean and simple. So now I know that's working in the background. I'm gonna go ahead and close that tab. minimize this real quick just to get things out of the way. And I can look at my network monitor. Hard disk I/O now is going nuts. And okay, so I can see that things are happening. And by the way, if you look over here at the physical memory, we're still not using a lot of memory to get this done. Also, when you mouse over things, you can see their status. And for example, this I can see is about halfway done copying that file. Now, also, if you notice when I bring the mouse up to the top corner, I like this. You can do all the different alt tabs. I like the simple ones, but this can be very customized in here, which I'll jump into in a second. But this allows you to quickly tab through things. But I find myself, because of the way the mouse one works, just go into the corner and jump into whatever it is I'm looking to do. And moving it over there. Now, the other thing you get on here is virtual desktops that allow you to do that too. And we're going to move this, more actions, and we'll send it to a different desktop. It's over here, move to desktop 2. So that's on desktop 2. Now I got the desktop set to be side by side. And this is a virtual desktop. So this one's on this desktop and this one's on here, and I got it set to switch over here at the bottom. What this allows me to do is have a bunch of things open that I'm working on, copying files, and I can jump over here to a different screen. And you can build these as many as you want. So you can customize the add virtual desktop or remove virtual desktop or configure desktops. And I can set all the different options in there to have as many as I want. 2 is generally enough for this laptop. I generally, even on my desktop, only use 2 of them because it's not imperative that I use them all the time, but sometimes it's handy when I have all the things open for editing a video, but I need another desktop because someone says, hey, I got a question, I want to work on this, and I don't have to close or move any of those windows. They can say exactly how I set them up. Because a lot of times, especially when you get 3 screens of real estate, you want all of the settings to be exactly how you want, and once they're there, you're like, okay, this is how I want it to look on this side, and then move it over. So let's jump back over here. And I'll put this back on the main desktop. And we'll just say move to desktop 1. Go back over here. And let's talk a little bit about some of the customizations. Because I don't think there's really a lot of other apps that I run all the time. I mean, there's LibreOffice is on here and some of the usuals. Those are kind of boring. I don't know there's much I can really show you that you're like, yeah, I've seen LibreOffice. I don't run Microsoft Office. Matter of fact, I hardly use LibreOffice. And someone's going to be upset, but yes, we use G Suite for everything because it's so much easier just to go through and have a series. When we're working on a project, we collaborate not all in the same building, and we want to work with people on it, especially where sometimes it's outside contractors on there. We just put a spreadsheet together and share it amongst people for a project. So we hardly use any of the Office tools natively on any of the Linux desktops that run here at my office. So that's, like I said, I can't get too much deep. There's just not a lot of other things that I'm doing in here. I do have things loaded that I played with, but they're not like my day-to-day applications that I'm using. So let's talk about customizations, which they've done a nice job of this too. So we go into system settings. Let me minimize this again. It's nice. This is where you can choose the themes. You can easily choose different things. I like the Breeze theme, but you can take any theme that you have. There's a subset of pieces to the theme. Like I like the Breeze theme for look and feel, not Breeze Dark, but then for the desktop part of the theme, I like the Breeze Dark. And then the cursor theme, I chose just the Breeze theme. Then the splash screen, I kind of like this look, but you can choose this one here, the new mix, which is actually kind of cool. I'll play with that one too. You can spend way too much time in here. So if you're a person who likes customization, this becomes a game into itself of all the just craziness you can do for customization, font management, icon packs you can load. And these are a lot of things you can get on there. They've even added emoticon support for loading some of the different emoticon sets that come in here and how they look and how they're displayed throughout the system. You can change the styles of the applications, fine tuning, radio button, radio boxes. Every little piece of how things look can be customized. So you're looking at this here, you can say, oh, what about this? Or what about this? And what you're seeing is this is a simulation of what it's going to look like. And yes, this one is called MS Windows 9X. I can't remember if it came default or I loaded it, but if you like the way the Windows 98, 95, Windows looked in the 90s, you can change the combo boxes and everything over to that. And it's kind of novel. I like this. It's a more modern look for there. You can also change the way the window decorations look. So this is the one I'm using here, but you can change to this look here, and you can see that like this is the up and down windows, and it'll, you know, maximize, minimize. You can change it to this look. You can also load more looks. Now, you can also customize other apps. So this is the KDE environment. This is the GNOME GTK application. So you can run, even though something may have been designed for the KDE environment and you have other things designed for the GNOME environment, there's a crossover and they will run each other's applications, but when they run, they can be skinned differently. So that's where you get these options here, and it allows you to change some of the GTK themes and how the window decorations work for that. Then we get into desktop behavior and you know, basic like display tooltips. But desktop effects, this is where, once again, you can go crazy and play with all the different things. And I don't feel like touching them right now because I got them customized the way I want. So I'm really happy with them. But I like the way the translucent windows, when things are under each other, way like how it's faded and you can see what's below it and it goes in there. These are all like very customizable. Magic lamp, that's this. I like Magic Lamp. It's really novel. It's just a cool effect. I don't know. It makes me happy. You can say, and I was probably a person who didn't like a lot of the desktop effects at first, but I don't know. Once you get used to them, the eye candy, there's a lot to be said about fun UI design. It's still very functional. It doesn't, as long as it doesn't detract from anything, I think it's great. This is screen edges, and this is where you can actually set all kinds of things for the screen edge. Now, I played around with it and I forget to do it and I've accidentally screwed it up. I was having my screen lock be the opposite side, so this brings me here, but then you can set like the screen lock to be one of the other sides, so it's screen locks. I'm just, back to the security hygiene, I don't walk up, like part of my procedure of getting up from my desk is Control-Alt-L to lock the screen. That's habit, so I don't know, I was trying to see if I would be slicker that way, but you can customize different configs. And once again, this is Linux, and it's very flexible, which also means you can even create scripts that run based on where you put the mouse in the corner and how you do things. But the easy one to me really is this right here. It's just being able to jump up the screen and go to there. So let's go down touchscreen options where you slide and things like that. Don't have a touchscreen, so not really relevant. Automatically lock my screen after 5 minutes, and the off chance that I somehow walk away or get distracted, it'll just lock automatically. I rarely see that because I'm used to the, like right here, keyboard shortcut, which is customizable. Control-Alt-L just makes me happy, and I think that's default. Virtual desktop customizations and how you want those to switch. You can customize all the different keys. You can make hotkeys to certain desktops. I have Control F1 and F2 if I'm on the keyboard to be able to jump between them. I don't really use this. I've tried it. It's a work in progress. It's kind of a novel idea. You can go through and create activities and load all your windows out exactly how you want based on an activity. So I set up one called video editing where it opens up all the programs and lays them out exactly how I want for there. And then you can go back to your default screen. It's novel. It doesn't seem to be all that wonderful. This is that task switcher we talked about here. So it's on the basic one, but let's look at the let's look at something cool looking. Cover switch, apply. And you may have remembered this from, I think Windows had this for a while, or does. I don't use Windows enough anymore, so I don't think about that part of it. I just fix Windows. I don't really play with little things inside of there. But they've got little things that you can do like this. Now, they look cool on here. I know Windows had this one for a while. I think they came up with it with the arrow theme or something in Windows. It's kind of cool. The only thing I got to say about the way these navigate is they don't work as well on a 3-screen because they want to spread across 3 screens. And this is where I think the eye candy detracts. I like the simple things on the side here because I know what I'm switching to is I can just see a screenshot of each one. And that, to me, looks better. So that comes back to simplicity. But you can control these on here. I don't know. Someone asked about what Alt-Shift-Back-Tab. Alt-Shift. If you hold, I'm holding down Alt-Tab, but if I hold Shift, it rolls through the other way. I think that's what they mean by it back tabs. Someone asked if that was a key, and I said no. Different scripts to do different things. You can run scripts on here, like I said, and customize the way things do. You can create window rules, so you can create individual behaviors for certain things. Based on description, based on appearance and fixes, so you can customize different things. Nothing, obviously I'm not really playing with it much. Shortcuts for things, once again, lots of hotkeys you can set and configure. Global shortcuts, standard shortcuts, web shortcuts. Not really using, they don't do a lot for me. Startup and shutdown, if you have background services, auto-started services that I want. I by default, like Shutter wants to be on there. I do use this. I probably should have mentioned this. I don't use it often, but this is kind of a neat remote desktop tool. And I believe this is open source and available on Windows as well. I could be wrong about that. But you can actually group together and save servers in here, and I don't. So you can RDP into them, VNC or SSH, which I've never even tried it for SSH. Yeah, I can SSH in, but my servers don't support anything but keys, and it wants password. So novel. For some, I've actually clicked on that. I always just use it for RDP. You can RDP into Windows servers here, and it actually creates a tab view. So if you have several RDP sessions open, it'll connect to all of them like that. I don't have any RDP servers I can handily get into. Don't use it that often, but I guess it does start on there, which actually I don't want it to start on startup. I didn't even realize it was because it's just probably hidden down somewhere here. All right. Running background services, hardware detection, things like that. These are other extra things. These are actually all the defaults, so I don't really think there's much you need to do there. Boot splash. This is kind of neat too. You can control how it boots up and what it looks like. You can set it to, I have it on details. I want to see everything on start. You can set it to basic text or just the way the Ubuntu text, or a pretty screen that tells you nothing and it just boots up. I like to watch everything scroll by on boot up. There is different file search functions and indexing, so if you can't remember where you put files, I don't use these very often, but it does have this built in, so you can search for it, and it can be customized the way you index it. Personalization, user manager. Now, KDE Wallet's kind of a neat thing that I don't use at all. I've seen it. It's kind of cool. So you have different ways you can save things and securely. Can't really talk much about it, so I don't use it. And we have the user manager here, which is kind of novel. So it's, if you want to add another user to there, you can put all that in. But all of these users by default are not connected or federated with any type of authentication server. That's how that works in here, in case you're wondering. So it doesn't have, someone asked about domain admins and things like that. That doesn't how this works. It does not connect to some type of server that federates and authenticates, which I'm absolutely fine with. So if that's where Linux, so to speak, can be lacking, is good federated control. It's not as clean as it is in Windows. We're used to it with the domain controllers and things like that. Ways to do it, but that's a different topic. You can control how the notifications come up in here. They got little customizations, how you want to do things. This is all at default as well. Default applications. I'm not going to say this is a default because I changed the web browser to be Google Chrome, but once again, easy to change. And man, Microsoft, when you change something in there, they bug you. Are you sure you want to change? Watch. Oh, look, Firefox can be default. Google can be default. No one bugged me that they have a better browser. They want to drive me nuts about telling me on there. Yeah. You can also, this is another nice thing, if you are using two browsers, you can say in an application based on the contents of the URL, choose which one, or run a different command where you can take the command differently, but you can actually have it choose when you send each one. I'm fine with default into Chrome. When I open up Firefox, it's generally, I'm pasting in the URL I want. I'm going to discard the changes. I just use console, which is the default console one, which works perfectly fine. You can change all the file associations. I like the way it's all tiered out. You can search things in here, but you can also just do as a pull down. This is easy way to change all the file associations and what program opens up with them, or what, in this case, it actually lets you pick more than one. And then when I right click on a file, I can then, by default it plays the top one, but I can right click and easily send it to the other one. And I keep that really clean. This is actually a nice way, and I'll open File Manager, see if I can't find something. Open with, so Ocular or GIMP can open this. So with both of them, I can choose which one or other and yet another one in there. So the way the file association works is really nice in Linux. It's very handy to me. So switching things, not a big deal if you want to have more than one viewer for a thing that you want to, so you don't have to be dedicated to one and have to go through the trouble of it. You can just right click on the file. By double click, it opens the default one. Right click opens all the ones you have in the list here. That's a very handy tool. Default locations for things, for personal files, auto start path, documents, downloads. So you can customize this if you wanted to be not the defaults. These are all defaults. Launcher feedback, bouncing cursor, and that's when you launch an app, you'll see the cursor wiggle around. I don't really use any accessibility options, but it does have all those sticky keys, keyboard filters, gesturing, and screen reader, so you can zoom into the screen. So if you are have trouble seeing things or small, and I gotta admit, I've thought about turning it on now that I'm over 40. This is a 1080 screen. I think it's a 12.5-inch screen. So yeah, that's a thing. These are the different. Nope, discard. These are the different Wi-Fis, which is kind of cool. This is real easy to access the entire list of them. You can also access it. Whoops, that's me scrolling around the mouse too much. You can always access that here with the network settings and be able to configure the network settings, or you can go here to the connections. And I like this for the Wi-Fi security and stuff like that. I can go through and it will let you view the password. That's actually really handy sometimes. So I can see what the password was. It's one of those things, like there's hacks to get it out of Windows. So even though they don't display it, there's tools that would extract it for you. So I like the fact that I can go here. And here's something that doesn't, the demo one, I can show you the password. And it's a Wi-Fi security, show password, and the password is what Wi-Fi, because that's my favorite password for demos, if anyone wonders. What that are temporary is that way when someone asks you what's the password, what Wi-Fi, of course the joke's getting old with my employees. They don't think it's funny anymore. But these are all the little network settings, so you can have a per network, and then here's your wired network settings. Now this is actually kind of a neat feature. You can hit this little plus here and create multiple profiles for the wired. So instead of just having one wired setting, you can choose which profile wired setting you want. I don't usually use that feature, but it is kind of neat that you can. The only time I really use this when I'm having to hop between multiple physical networks, I'll create a series of profiles. So I got to hop on this network, hop on that one, and then you can just click them. And matter of fact, because there's nothing plugged in, it's not going to show up, but it would actually list them right here, and you can just click between them and swap back and forth between different IP settings. So okay, I'm on this network, and flop back and forth very simply without having to type it in. But with the network settings, you can put in everything. This is all set to DHCP with an outside DNS server, which I change just from time to time. But you can manually add multiple networks. Matter of fact, one nice thing is when you're adding these, if you notice how it has a lot of them, you can bind multiple IP addresses very easily in one menu to one network interface. This is so flexible, and it's something that makes me really happy, because when you're trying to work on a troubleshoot networking, Windows is the worst because it pauses when it DHCPs for so long. I can create a multitude of networks on here in seconds and hop between them without thinking about it, and it's very, very fast. Windows is like, no, let me just think for a little while. Let me put the little spinny thing over your network interface and chew on this idea for a while, which I don't understand why Windows 10 is so bad about that, because Windows servers aren't. Windows servers, actually, when you set network addresses, they seem to set them fast. Windows itself, it's just substantially slower. Windows 7 was bad. Windows 10 is much worse. You also have all the security settings in here. So if you have IPv6, IPv4, or any type of 802.1x security authentication to tie in there, that's definitely can be done. And down here at the bottom, we got the VPN. So whenever I'm out of the office, I VPN, and we use a OpenVPN along with security certificates. That's mostly loaded inside of here. I think there's one thing you have to load. If I believe I have a tutorial on this, or maybe I should do a tutorial on exactly how to configure Linux to use the VPN and make sure that gets connected. But it works. It works great to connect to the Office pack with OpenVPN or any VPN service. You know, if you're using a private like PIA, I've added those in here too. I got it out of here now, but you can connect to whichever one you want with the OpenVPN. They have different proxies if you want to use that. I don't really do any of that. Timeout values for connection preferences, SSL preferences, which is kind of cool because you can then go here and remove any CAs yourself if you don't want them in here. So I thought that's kind of cool that they make it very accessible for who the signing authorities are. Whether or not you want to configure any cache settings, disk cache, if there's any cookies for certain things, the way network cookies work, browser identifications, little details like that. You can have these credentials back for your credentials used to access SMB shares. That's all in here. Bluetooth, not visible from devices, fix it. I don't care. I don't really have my Bluetooth turned on. I never use anything Bluetooth on here that often. but I guess I could. I don't really listen to headphones or anything with it, so that's the only thing I probably would use. You can customize your input devices, display and monitor how speed works on different things. OpenGL, you can customize. This is all at default and it works perfectly fine. You can select the test picture to be grayscale, RGB, so you can do calibration on here. This is kind of nice. So if you have some tweaking you really want to do to make your screen look exactly how you want. But all my displays, including this one, are IPS displays, and out of the box they look great. So this is all set at default. Multimedia options, volume, things like that. I will note, so if any developers are listening to me, they have chose not to have a stereo option in here. So if you want left and right balance, they've just completely skipped out on that part. I don't know why. And I think this laptop might be mono, but my desktop is not, and it's annoying because there's no right and left balance on there. So yeah. And this is kind of like you're used to in Windows, the default hardware, so you can choose what the default outputs are. You can actually choose them here as well, so when you're adjusting the volume options, you can go through and customize that. Now, you may have noticed something. Let me show you here. So here's this, and here's this. When you launch something from down here, it brings you the same menu, but it skips out on all the sub-menus that you hear when you start with the settings, which is kind of nice. So you're actually not going somewhere different to see this. And you may have noticed you're linked. So let me move it so it makes it easier to see. I slide this, it slides right there. So pretty cool the way that works, because it's not unfamiliar. You don't have this weird multi-menu thing, especially Windows 10 has gone that way. There's more than one way to do things, and they've got things kind of convoluted. They just give you a cut-down version because you're only accessing the part you want. So that big connections menu there versus the connections menu here, when I go to configure network connections, it doesn't have the big list on the side, but the same menu. It's just a cleaner version of that menu when you launch only that menu. I like that quite a bit. That's really nice. Power saving options. By the way, Linux versus Windows on the laptop. The laptop's never had Windows on it, but I seem to be getting the same expected battery life that Windows users got. So take that for what it's worth. And battery life is very subjective because processors, modern processors, throttle up and down based on usage. So when I'm just typing away and not really taxing the processor, this thing lasts forever. The battery on this is amazing. But I'm generally not taxing. Actually, most of the time I'm spending in a terminal when I'm fixing something on a server. That hardly taxes at all. There's not much processing power going on. Cady Connect is neat. I haven't used it, but it allows you to connect your phone and allows you to interface a lot with your phone right here on your desktop, see notifications and things like that. Printers, oddly, they work fine. I've been amazed with the printer support that Linux has built in. So for those of you wondering, how do I print things? I can't guarantee every printer works with here, but I will tell you all the ones we've had at the office never have a problem. Matter of fact, I've gone to clients and tested their printers when I'm trying to figure out if they have a driver problem and plugged my computer into it and it prints right away. Like it says no problem detecting your printers. You hit add printer, it's actually really smart. It goes through and it's going to find, I can manually do whatever I want, but this is what amazes me. It just scanned the network and discovered like this new Canon we just plugged in here. It discovered these other printers here. It's fast. It finds printers on the network like you wouldn't believe. So you can just go next and yes and install these printers. Sometimes it doesn't detect the drivers real well, so you have to like tell it what type of printer it is, but the list is outstanding. The support's really good in there. And how you want to handle removable devices, if you want them to pop up or just open an application. I leave this at default because I always want it to ask me what to do because I don't always want to do the same thing. So that's kind of how that goes in there. But that's kind of the overview of using KDE Neon, my review of it, the way it works. I'm really happy with it. It's absolutely solid and great for handling things, running Linux instead of Windows. It's really not having any problems with it. You know what I mean? I can't really say that there's a problem I have or something I can't do besides run Photoshop, of course, or play video games. But everything else, because I do everything in the browser, I can code if I need to with Genie to get things done. I spend a lot of the times, in WordPress where I SSH in 2 different devices from here. It's a solid, way to run. I don't worry about the updates. Overall, I'm really, really happy with it. It runs wonderful on this laptop, which you can probably pick up for a reasonable price because this laptop's a few years old. And you're watching me run this smooth as can be while running OBS on here, and it just works. We record the podcast on here and everything else using, actually, that's why it says podcast. When I record some of the podcast stuff, we use different input devices to OBS. And you know, all the production things we do, from video editing to editing the thumbnails, my entire YouTube production, I've done entire videos that I filmed when I'm out of state on this laptop running Linux, and it works perfectly fine. So if you're, like I said, if you got the gaming excuse, I get you. If you have to run Photoshop, yeah, I can't. Photoshop's definitely more powerful than GIMP, but give this a try. And there's actually is a lot of games in here. Maybe I don't play a lot of the games at all that are available in Linux, but there's a couple gaming channels. If you type in like the Linux Gamer, there's a couple people out there, and I think Hex DSL's and our YouTuber, they cover all the games in there. So maybe if you do switch to Linux, and they play Linux native games, which does not mean free. Some of them are paid games that have native Linux support. So there is a lot of games out there, and maybe if your game does have Linux support, your excuse is kibosh, then you can just actually switch to Linux as your desktop and go from there. So hopefully this was enlightening about how I run Linux and how I use it and how it works and what KDE Neon looks like. So it's kind of a combo review of KDE Neon and me running Linux full time. But take it for what it's worth. Leave your questions and comments below, or if there's a specific subtopic you would like me to cover out of this, let me know. And I'll try to cover it for you. All right, thanks for watching. If you like the content here, like and subscribe.